Ladies and gentlemen, welcome for today's panel discussion. I'm Samantha Nicole Umali, and it is my pleasure to introduce myself as the moderator for this panel discussion on sensitivity to the socio-cultural dimension of communication. Today, we will be exploring various aspects of communication, including cultural and intercultural modes of communication used to show respect, as well as issues such as politically correct words and gender sensitivity. As we engage in this discussion, we hope to promote greater understanding and appreciation of the cultural differences in communication and to foster more effective intercultural communication. To start off, we have fantastic panelists with us today who will share their knowledge with us. First, we have Mr. Kin Oliveira, representing Asia's Pearl of the Orient, the Philippines. Next, we have Ms. Liza Gacos, who represents the most visited country in the world, which is France. Then Mr. Dan Ibale is representing the country Mexico, which is known for being the home of the world's largest pyramid. And lastly, Mr. Ralph de Lima represents the United Kingdom, the land of honor and glory. So as you can see, I am wearing a hanbok, a traditional attire of the Koreans, because today I am representing the land of the morning calm, which is Seoul, South Korea. The other panelists are also wearing traditional attire from each of their representing countries. So without further ado, let's get started with our discussion. And to kick off our discussion, let's start first with Mr. De Lima.
Greetings, everyone. Some of you may know, in the United Kingdom, there are various cultural and intercultural modes of communications that are used to show respect. For instance, in formal settings, it's customary to address someone by their title and last name, such as Mr. Smith or Dr. Jones. This is a sign of respect for their position or status. Additionally, when meeting someone for the first time, a firm handshake is often used to show respect and establish trust. Politically correct language is also important in the United Kingdom. It's important to be mindful of the language we use to refer to people with disabilities or special needs. Using words like handicapped or retarded can be offensive, so it's best to use person-first language like person with disability or person with special needs. Gender sensitivity is another important aspect of communication in the United Kingdom. It's important to avoid using gendered language or making assumptions based on someone's gender. For example, using the term fireman instead of firefighter excludes women from the profession. It's also important to be respectful of different cultures and religions, as the United Kingdom is a diverse and multicultural society.
Thank you for your insights, Mr. De Lima. It's clear that sensitivity to cultural and socio-political issues is key to effective communication in the UK. Let's listen next to Ms. Gacos.
Well, in Paris, it is important to use culturally appropriate words and gestures to show respect. When greeting someone, it is customary to address them using their title or profession, such as Monsieur or Madame, and maintain eye contact. For example, in a formal setting, it is customary to kiss on both cheeks when greeting someone, but in a professional setting, it's better to shake hands and maintain eye contact. Another aspect to consider is gender sensitivity through language and culture. It is important to use gender-neutral terms to promote inclusivity and equality. For instance, it is now more appropriate to use madame for all women, instead of using mademoiselle to refer to unmarried women. Additionally, it is important to be sensitive to age, social status, and religion when communicating in Paris. Addressing someone using their title or profession and avoiding making assumptions shows respect for their status and beliefs. It is also important to be aware of proverbs and their meanings to avoid misinterpretation.
Thank you for your insightful discussion, Ms. Gacos, on the socio-cultural dimension of communication in France. It is very important to recognize and respect the different cultural and linguistic biases to ensure effective communication. So next is Mr. Kin Oliveira.
Mabuhay, everyone! In the Philippines, communication is deeply influenced by our culture, practices, and beliefs. One example is our use of po and opo words to show respect to elder or those in authority. It's a way of acknowledging their seniority and position in society. We have also different ways of greeting people depending on the region. In the Visayas, we have beso-beso or cheek-to-cheek kiss While in the Mindanao, a gesture is one where you can take the hand of the elder and touch it with forehead. Another important aspect of communication in the Philippines is gender sensitive. We have different ways to address people based on their gender and social status. For example,
Thank you, Mr. Elievra, for highlighting the importance of cultural and gender sensitivity in communication in the Philippines. It's a reminder for all of us to be mindful of our words and actions and to strive for respectful and inclusive communication. Last but not least, let's hear from Mr. Ibarra.
Buenos dias, mi amigos, mi amigas. In Mexico, it is important to be aware of the various gestures used to show respect. For instance, making direct eye contact is considered a sign of respect and interest in the conversation. Additionally, the use of a "usted" instead of "tú" is a formal way of addressing someone and showing respect. However, it is important to note that communication can vary within different regions of Mexico and among different classes. Another important aspect to consider is gender sensitivity through language. It is important that there is a tendency to use gendered language, such as amigos for a group of males or amigas for a group of females. However, this can exclude individuals who identify as non-binary or gender non-conforming. It is important to use inclusive language such as amigos or amigos y amigas to make everyone feel included and respected. In terms of politically correct languages, it is important to recognize the diversity within Mexico and to use inclusive language that acknowledges different genders, sexual orientations, and ethnicities. For example, instead of using the gendered term L or la, refer to one, we can use the more inclusive li or else. We should also be mindful of the language we use to refer different ethnic groups, using terms that are respectful and not derogatory.
Thank you for your insight, Mr. Bale. So the panelists have provided insightful and thought-provoking responses about the sensitivity to the socio-cultural dimension of communication in their representing countries. I would like to ask our panelists, what do you think are the most important aspects of cultural sensitivity in communication, and how do these aspects manifest in different cultures?
It is very, very important to be aware of the language and communication norms and aspects of the culture you're with. For example, in South Korea, they have different levels of politeness when addressing depending on their age and status. It's also important to understand non-verbal cues such as bowing or hand gesture.
I completely agree. Another important aspect of cultural sensitivity is the understanding the social context of communication. This includes factors such as gender, age, and religion, which can greatly impact communication in different cultures. For example, in cultures, women may not be expected to speak up as much as men, and older people may be given more respect.
I would like also to add that it's important to be aware of different taboos or cultural restrictions when communicating with people from different culture. For example, in the Philippines, there are certain topics that are considered taboo or offensive, such as discussing politics or religion in public.
Yes, and I think it's important to acknowledge that cultural sensitivity is an ongoing process. We need to constantly educate ourselves and be willing to adapt our communication styles to better accommodate those from different backgrounds.
Absolutely, and it's clear that cultural sensitivity is a complex and multifaceted issue, but one that is essential for effective communication in today's globalized world. Now, to wrap up our discussion, what advice do you have for individuals or organizations looking to improve their sensitivity to cultural and intercultural modes of communication and gender sensitivity in language and communication?
I would advise taking the time to learn about the culture and language of the people they are communicating with. This can involve researching cultural norms, learning key phrases and gestures, and being open to feedback and correction.
Additionally, Practicing active listening and asking questions can help clarify any misunderstanding or culture difference in communication.
Also, be mindful of your own language and how it might be perceived. Consider the context and your audience when selecting words and phrases. Avoid stereotypes and be careful with humor, as it may not translate well across cultures.
Therefore, making a conscious effort to use inclusive language and avoid assumptions can create a more welcoming and respectful environment for all individuals.
Thank you for all of your advice. So our panelists have shed light on the importance of being sensitive to the socio-cultural dimension of communication, particularly in terms of various cultural and intercultural modes of communication, and gender sensitivity in language and communication in each of the representing countries. We have learned about the unique ways different cultures and countries approach communication, as well as the importance of being mindful of social status, age, religion, and gender when communicating. So overall, it is important to approach communication with an open mind and to be willing to learn and adapt to different cultural and social contexts. Through sensitivity and awareness, we can foster better communication and understanding between individuals and across cultures. Let us all be mindful of our words and actions and continue to learn from each other, celebrating diversity of our community. This has been a great discussion on demonstrating sensitivity to the social-cultural dimension of communication. Again, thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights and to our audience for tuning in. Thank you all for joining us in this important discussion.